Your attention, please. Paul and Alex are required to proceed to the gate immediately.
What?
No way.
What is happening here?
This is the last call for the Layovers podcast.
Really?
Come on, man. This is our thing. We got this.
Oh, yeah.
No, wait, Alex!
Cabin crew on doors for departure.
Damn. Flight 103 to Denver. And Alex missed his plane. The boarding was just completed, as you've heard, guys. Alex is not in the plane. I don't know what to do. I'm completely at loss here. So, you know what? Since we're going to Denver, and I wanted to find someone who can help me actually understand Denver, because I've actually never been. I hired and brought the best expert in conspiracy theories ever. He's also a food expert by night. And he also has a very similar voice than Alex. That's Will Hunter. Hello, Will. How are you?
Hey, Paul. How you doing? I like the intro. I'm glad I can ride standby on this flight.
So you've been to Denver.
Yes, I go 4 or 5 times a year.
There you go. And the reason, for those who don't have context, the reason I mention conspiracy is that because there's a lot of stories about Denver Airport.
Oh, yes. It's. I don't know where these came from originally, but we'll get into them. And Denver Airport has quite the colorful past, and I don't think it has anything to do with what was legalized there about 5 years ago.
Oh, I never didn't think about that one. Obviously, it's Colorado. Yeah,
exactly.
So, why is Will on the show and Alex missed his planes? It's not a big change. Our format, don't worry, guys. Alex is still on. Lots of timing, screw-ups, etc. So we decided with Alex that I'm going to record a few episodes without him. So we're trying this thing this year where the few times when Alex is not available, I'm going to record with guest hosts. So this is what I'm trying. Of course, I had to bring Will because Will is not only a podcaster extraordinaire, but was with us actually on episode 65, Boston. That was exactly 2 years ago. Wow. Almost to the day. It was January 2018 because, and by the way, Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Will, I forgot to say that. And you know what? It's not conspiracy here, but 2 years ago when you were on the show, you came to replace Alex because Alex just had his daughter. Mm-hmm. And I believe you have similar news to share.
Yes. I have a 4-week-old daughter, and I'm on paternity leave right now. So that's why I'm able to make this work a little bit more than Alex. But yeah, it's kind of strange that exactly 2 years later, it's funny, like his daughter's due date was 1 day removed from my daughter's due date. They weren't born very close to each other due to things. But yeah, it's kind of funny that it's all come full circle.
If I remember correctly, his daughter was the first female birth in the Hunter family for like 5 centuries or something.
180 years. 180 years, yes.
Oh, so now you guys are just overcompensating. You'll have daughters for the next 20 years, right?
Exactly. It's like British buses. None of them for 2 hours, and then they all come along.
well, you know British buses quite well because for those who don't know you, for those, shame on you, who haven't been listening to 65 or to Mastication Nation, the show that you're hosting with Alex, you are not living in the UK. You live in California. Are you still there, by the way? You're still in California. I'm not making a mistake, right?
No. I'm in San Francisco. I've been here for about 10 years, but obviously make it back to the motherland periodically, back to London, and do a bit more traveling than the average person, but not as much as you guys, not even close.
Talking about that, I'm taking a self-imposed travel ban in January. I usually do that every year. I wasn't able last year for a very good reason for those who remember. But this year, I'm not traveling. It's also to wait for Alex to actually, because as you might know, Will, we have a huge backlog of flights that we still haven't covered. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that with you because it's a bit that's the only issue with this format of trying with guest hosts is that I don't want to bore them with my stories about traveling. The format will slightly be different, and obviously because Will knows very well the food, we're going to talk a little bit more about food. There's a lot of news about food in this episode, but before I get that, a few shout outs and reviews as we always do. I know that Will be sitting in front of me looking at, this is not my show, why are you doing shout outs? But first, I told you Happy New Year because we're recording today the 13th of January 2020. 2020. I was about to say 2019. See, I'm still not the right thing. Happy New Year to all of you guys. And a special mention to Alexandra, Avi Alex. I think that's her Instagram handle, for two things. First, because that's the randomest thing ever. I was in Tokyo in December. I'm with Chris Collins, a good friend of mine at CC Collins, I think. I'm not sure, Chris. I'm so sorry if I mistook your Twitter handle. I'm saying it by memory. I was in a craft beer bar in Tokyo, and suddenly this girl enters with a group, and I'm like, I'm sure I know her. Yeah, of course, I recognized her from her Instagram picture, and that was Alexandra, who was one of her biggest fans. So Happy New Year to Alexandra, because she did something that she needs to tell us about one day. She went to spend New Year's Eve in the TWA hotel. They had a party for New Year's Eve. That
so
was
awesome.
really cool, actually.
I hope it was all themed like
I've never been-
1960s, 1970s.
Have you been to the hotel, actually, even?
No, I've driven past it, but I've not been, unfortunately.
Ah, mate. Yeah, same. I saw it when I was last in New York. It was 2 months ago. I saw it exiting Terminal 4. I was like, it's just right there. It's just right there. But I didn't go. Also, that's the second U.S. airport in a row. We usually try to rotate airports, but that's going to make one of our listener, Donnie4126 on Instagram, very happy, because he had mentioned that his only critique about the show is that he would wish that we do a few more American airports. So there you go. We have 2 in a row, and probably you'll have actually 3 in a row. I'm not going to spoil it for the next episode, but it's probably going to be an episode that's going to make some people happy. You'll understand why when you listen to it in a few weeks. And to his point, I've checked actually, because it's a new year, I've checked, we've done, that's our 26th US airport. So it's not that we don't do any US airport, right? We did 4 last year, so that was not a lot. We did 8 in 2018, only 1 in 2017, 3 in 2016, and 9 in 2015. But you know what? I know that we have a big listenership in the US, so they must be complaining. I totally get it. At the same time, imagine the poor guys in Australia. They only ever had only 1, Melbourne, and they also are very big listeners. So we try to make everybody happy. We can't. Let's not even mention Latin America, or even worse, Africa. So yeah, Donnie, I promise you we'll have a little bit more. But look, there's 2 in a row, probably 3 as well. Have you ever flown, Will, to Dallas Fort Worth, DFW, because that was our last episode? Have you ever flown there?
Yeah, I was coming back on the way back from my honeymoon several years ago. We were in Cabo and we lived in California. And for some reason, the cheapest flight was, oh, I know why. We were coming back from Boston. Regardless, we went via Dallas and had a layover there. That makes way more sense than going, Cabo, and then that makes sense. But yeah, no, I've been there, and I was listening to the episode last week or last time, and I agree with what Alex was saying. It's like this, megalith of a giant of an airport, and while it's okay, it's got some nice amenities. It's not one I would love to spend too much time in. And it's also not great for getting into the city if you so choose.
So because we have some feedback, so some people tend to agree with you, some people don't, but I'm going to quote just a few. First is Andrew Young on Twitter, if I remember correctly, AJCG Young, who says that, he actually quotes Alex. It says, gargantuan, functional, and boring. Yeah. Alex was right, according to Andrew. He would recommend, however, to trying to connect through Love Field at DAL, whenever possible. I'm guessing that's the other airport of the city, because I've never been to that one.
Yeah, it's kind of like, Chicago has the 2, one massive one, one small one. It's identical.
Midfield and
exactly the same.
I see. And he says it's the antidote to the warehouse non-identity airport like DFW. And it also has apparently a display commemorating the unique on-craft presidential swearing in after the JFK shooting. And apparently that's worth seeing. So there's a reason for me. Have you ever been to Love Field, DL?
No, but that's really interesting, because obviously JFK was assassinated in Texas, and that's where they had to do all that swearing in on the plane. And I'd never really thought about that, but obviously they would have to have left from Love Field. Wow, I should really try and get out there. That's really interesting from an American history point of view.
Exactly, that's what I thought too. Brian Potratz, and I'm sure, Brian, if I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Potratzb on Twitter. Caught the TFW episodes on my flight back there after the holiday. The genius of Dallas-Fort Worth is layout if you start or end there. So apparently he thinks that if you start or end there, if it's an origin or destination airport, it's a great layout because super short walk to bags or transport, little vehicle traffic compared to other hubs like ORD, Atlanta, LAX, etc., and short TSA lines. But he admits that transfers are tough. So I've never actually used it as a landing on origin, but you just said, Will, that you don't really like it either.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm trying to think about airports that suck for transfers but are great for destinations, or vice versa, and not to spoil it too much. But Denver, I've always had great ins and outs of, but I've never transferred there. So next time I need to go via somewhere, I'll give that some thought. But I know like Heathrow is a nightmare to transfer at, Charles de Gaulle's a nightmare to transfer at, Frankfurt's a nightmare to transfer at, and they all suck getting in and out of as well.
You know your stuff.
Yeah.
See, this is why I got him. He knows which airports. Maybe he's just pandering to me because he's using the examples of airports I don't like, Charles de Gaulle and Frankfurt. And I'll come to Frankfurt a little bit later, guys. 2 reviews very quickly. One from Richard Laycock on Twitter. It was about episode 101 where we were talking about Hanoi. And he said, I have to say, this is my favorite episode of them all. Paul's Halong Bay trip was incredible. Thank you so much, Richard. Also because I almost tend not to listen to the episodes. I mean, of course I have to because I'm editing them, but I wasn't super happy of how I described my Halong Bay trip. So thank you, Richard, for these words of encouragement. And I encourage all of our listeners to go to Halong. It's absolutely fantastic. And another review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts nowadays, 5 stars from Far Westly SNA from the US. That was in December. Glad to have found this podcast. It's a great companion when I'm on the road or have downtime at home. The topics covered are interesting and entertaining. I'm going to say that even for Will and myself, we have great chemistry. And he says something, and it's true, and I need to address that. He says that he's starting to pronounce the word episode the same way Paul does. Yeah, because I have a very peculiar way of saying a few words like podcast as well because of probably the fact that French is my first language and I mix it with a bit of all the language I speak. So yeah, sometimes the words, the way I pronounce them is a bit weird. So I'm going to launch a trend of saying episode. And if you guys want to review, you can obviously do that. There's a new link up, by the way. It's ratethispodcast.com/layovers. If you click that, you can there submit a review on your favorite platform. ratethispodcast.com/layovers. One thing, of course, I said earlier that Alex is not here and that the format is slightly different. So I will not, because I need to also mention this, I will not do the reviews that I hinted at the end of episode 102, which are the first class in Singapore Airlines, say Cathay Pacific. And I know that a lot of people will not be happy. But again, I don't want to bore Will with stuff like that, which means that you guys will have to wait for them, which is why I'm not traveling again. So I don't put too much backlog. But we'll talk a little bit about the food, however, because this is why I have Will here today. Another thing I need to apologize. I'm sorry, Will, because I'm going to some house cleaning. We had feed issues during the holidays. I don't know if, Will, you had any. I hope not. It's my fault, guys. I screwed up by switching Layovers to a new website. Now the website is up, still layovers.to. You can directly listen to all the episodes there and obviously subscribe on your favorite platform. But when I did the switch over, I did something completely messed up in the DNS. I mean, it's a long story, but basically it meant that the major podcasting app, which are Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, got it. And then all the others, and there's like a billion of them, some of them never got episode 102. And then this just appeared when I fixed it about 2 weeks ago. I can see it on the stats. Not everybody has listened to that episode. So please, after listening to Will and me, please go back and listen to episode 102, please, because it's a cool episode. It was a lot of fun. And I want to give a shout out to Maxime at FeedPress. FeedPress is a tool that allows me to get some stat, would help me actually putting the feed back up. FeedPress is a great tool if you ever host a podcast, if you want to have stats. And I had a question from a listener, but I forgot who it was. I'm so sorry because, of course, it was the holidays and I didn't really keep up with the notes. How do I listen to Layovers or any podcast actually on Alexa, Amazon Echo, etc.? Actually, TuneIn, which is one of the platforms that allows to listen to podcasts, has an app there. And if you say, Alexa, I want to listen to Layovers, so I'm going to say it is super loud. So for those who have a speaker, it will trigger the Alexa, listen to Layovers.
Alexa, give
if you do that,
Layovers 5 stars.
There you go. So you can do that. And shout out to Bertrand, a friend of mine who was here over the holidays. I don't have Alexa at home. He has the new Amazon Echo with a screen, the thing that looks like science fiction. And he sent me a pic of 102 being displayed. So he was listening to it on his new toy. So thank you. If you want to as well share pictures of you listening to the show, you can always do that. 2 more shout outs. I'm so sorry, Will.
No, it's
good. First, Ben is the host of Travel Man podcast. Actually, Alex was interviewed by him early October. I don't think I've mentioned it on this show, which is bad. I should have. I don't think he numbers the episodes. So just look for the episode that says Alex Hunter, the Sherpa. I think that's the name of the episode. And he just released yesterday, so Monday, the 12th of January, 2020. The first part, because I babble way too long, and Will is currently experiencing that. The first part of my interaction with Ben, it was fun. We talked about stuff like the 747, obviously aviation, travel in general, what it means to travel. And if you want to know what's my earliest memory of flying, well, you have to tune in. So Travel Man Podcast, travelmanpodcast.com is where you find all the information. And shout out to Ben because he lives in Melbourne, and I'm really hoping that the fires and everything are getting much better because this is no fun at all. And another podcast that you guys, especially in the UK, probably know about, Plain Talking UK. Carlos, Matt, Nev, and Armando, they host this show. They have tons of episodes. And I was featured for the second year in a row in their Christmas episode that was out just before Christmas, I think December 22 or something. In the first episode, so a year ago, I made them having an explicit rating because I swore on the podcast. This time, they bleeped me out, so they don't have the explicit. So I'm really bad at this. So I'm so sorry, guys, but it was really a lot of fun. And 2 days ago, so on the 11th of January, it was their 300th episode. And we all went, it was a live recording. I was recording with them, so they invited me again, which is super cool. And we were at the Renaissance Hotel at Heathrow. Have you ever been to the Renaissance Hotel at Heathrow? Do you know where that is?
No, I know where it is. I think I know exactly where it is, but I never really had a reason to stay at the airport.
It's exactly what I'm about to say. I never had a reason to stay at an airport at Heathrow because I live here, and now I've actually stayed there, and I had a view with the runway, which is the northern runway, and it was amazing. And we did the recording there live with a lot of their community. That was fantastic. We had a lot of people actually that also listened to Layovers, which came to me, hey, hi, I'm listening to you. I'm like, oh, wow, I had no idea. So it was really, really fun. And fascinatingly, and it's sadly not on the show for you guys. The show will be released by the time probably this gets released. You'll have it on your podcast apps, Plain Talking UK. We had an ATC, I think the head of ATC, I don't know what the title is, of Heathrow Tower, who came to tell us how they did react and how they experienced the crash of BA 38. You remember the 777 of BA that had a flame out just as it was landing at Heathrow and crashed just before the runway. That was about 12 years ago now. Right. I mean, if you don't know about it, guys, just Google BA 38 Heathrow and you'll see it was quite a story. But getting the actual inside story from a guy that was in tower trying to make all that, it's just insane. But again, just shout out to Carlos, Matt, Nev, Armando, but also Pip, Captain Nick, Steph, Captain Jeff. Captain Jeff is actually the host of Airline Pilot Guy. I'm sure you know him. Micah, Mila, etc. All these guys were there. Some of them were recording. Some of them were just in the audience. We had a super fun. They had a cake, which was the Tower of Heathrow. So the cake was, like a Great British Bake Off type of cake. It was like super big with like the actual tower. It was fantastic. Very tasty as well.
Slight tangent on the censorship. Sorry. I know that you're a big Brooklyn Nine-Nine fan.
You know me well.
Yeah, they just jumped they were distributed by Fox for the first 8 years of their run, and now they're on NBC. And there's a really interesting thing within the US TV market. So would you rather swear as much as you want in the recording and then be bleeped, or infer the swear. So rather than saying F you, you say fudge you. And that's what's actually said in the thing. And so what happened was with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, they weren't swearing. They were using fake swear words when they were on Fox. And when they moved to NBC, now they can say whatever they want and they just bleep the swear words. And so it's interesting. So
I didn't know that.
Well, here's the thing is
wow.
on international broadcasts, it might be different. But in the US, Fox has different rules to NBC. And they all have to stay below whatever the FCC says. But, they have their own rules. Fox doesn't allow you to swear and bleep it, or you to say, rather than hell, you say HE double hockey sticks, something along those lines. Sorry, complete tangent, I know.
Were you watching Battlestar Galactica, the newest one, not the one back from the 70s? They use frack instead of the F word.
Yeah.
It was said, frack you, right? And it was very interesting to see a way around, which almost became a word, by the way. A lot of people, less now probably, but a lot of people were I was using it for a while. But it's very interesting to me what you're saying, because I'm always kind of unsure about that explicit. When does it actually become explicit? The word that got bleeped out from the show I mentioned over Christmas was not a curse word, but because kids listening, they removed it. So it's really hard to define what is. I mean, some words are clear, but some others for me, maybe I just don't have kids, so I'm not as sensitive, I guess.
Well, this kind of nicely, sorry to take it off topic a little bit further, but our last episode of Mastication Nation, which we do with Alex, one of the things we talked about was the fake food revolution. So Beyond Meat and Impossible Burgers.
Impossible Burger.
And there's been ads here for how Burger King has Impossible meat in their burgers now, in their Whoppers. And they did an ad where they were like surprising people by like having them have a burger and they didn't realize it was impossible. And one of the guys goes, wow, damn, that's really good. And there's been a petition with 1 million signatures about the fact that they used a swear word. And the swear word was damn. And so that shows how careful they have to be here.
The here that you said at the end is also very cultural. I've seen that some of the words that are being used in the US will totally be acceptable here. Yeah. And some words in the British slang are completely off limits.
Oh, God,
you should never use them, and people get completely offended if you even jokingly use them, right?
Yeah.
So it's a learning curve for me, learning curve. So, but we know we have kids listening to this show, so we've been trying with Alex to avoid using some of these words. I will say effing now. I don't know if that's really still acceptable or not, but I will say that. To finish on the 300, because I need to say that, I want to make a special mention to Steve. He's British, English maybe? Probably English. He lives in Stavanger, and I suspect he moved there because you have great deals on flights from Stavanger. And he said that Layovers was the first show that he ever listened to. So thank you so much, Steve. It was really cool to meet you. Great to have a chat, which I know a lot of our listeners actually are saying we should do meetups. Mentioned in the last episode that we might, and I think I will. I'm making maybe even a test soon to see how the dynamics would work, because I really want to do fan shows. And I'll come to do one in San Francisco, so to have, again, Will with me, but live this time.
Yeah.
So what's up with you, Will? Are you still the one putting ads on my videos?
Sorry about that. Yeah, and as 2020 rolls around and everybody and their mother has a smart TV, you're going to see more and more ads. That's Paul's referring to my day job, where I make people miserable by monetizing, them to get to their content. And with the fact that we're now so fractured, at least in the US, as far as Apple TV, Disney Plus, Hulu Plus, CBS All Access, Hulu, Netflix, so on and so forth. We have 1,000 different ways to access content. We got to make money on them somehow, and I apologize for that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No, of course, do not apologize. We have maybe not as much, but quite a similar situation in the UK. The only one in your list we don't have, I think Hulu is not here, but I never even tried, but we don't have Disney Plus. And I promise everyone that's listening that I have not seen The Mandalorian. No, of course I've not seen it, because Disney Plus is not here. But yeah, no, I totally understand, and I'm not angry at you, Will. I forgive you.
Thank you.
But here we'll talk about food. But before we talk about food, one thing about San Francisco that I didn't know: have you ever been to Treasure Island?
Yeah. Lots of times.
I've actually never been to Treasure Island, so I just know that it is a man-made island that was made in the 30s, I think. for some. Do you have any history about it? When it was built?
Between the East Bay, where I live, which is where Berkeley, Oakland, and so on and so forth are, and the city itself of San Francisco, there's the famous Bay Bridge, not the Golden Gate Bridge, the Bay Bridge, which if you follow American sports, the NBA team Warriors, that's the bridge on their jersey. And there's a natural island right in the middle of it called, why am I drawing a blank on this? Übermensch. And that has where the two bridges connect. And then slightly off to the right of that natural island is a man-made island called Treasure Island. And it was used by the military for barracks, for station, and it was relinquished. I think the government still uses it a little bit, but now it's got a winery on it. You can go take hikes, got great views of the city. I mean, it's completely flat. There was a fantastic flea market that a friend of mine ran for the longest time. Then I'm just moved it off Treasure Island, called the Treasure Island Flea. And I was out there, multiple times a year. And you ride your bike all the way there from the East Bay as well, which I used to do on my lunch break.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've never been there. It just got my attention for a totally unrelated reason. And I went on Google Maps, the satellite view to see what it was. And I'm like, oh, wow, it's man-made, etc. And what I learned is just before the U.S. Navy took over, that was just before the Second World War, because it needed facilities. There were plans for it to become the airport. Yeah. So San Francisco would have had a man-made island airport before everybody else, because we know that Hong Kong, the new one, or Kansai, Osaka, are man-made islands, but this is something quite recent, and San Francisco could have been the one. I didn't know that. Did you know?
I did know, but in hindsight, it would make no sense. It's so close to the cities. It's like tack close to things, and it's also massively radioactive. Like the ground. What? Yeah, like the ground underneath it is not safe. I mean, they've done some studies to try and fix it up, because there's rumors that there's a giant Chinese consortium that wants to build literally skyscrapers on it, because
housing.
Yes, and they are building something on there. I think it's an assisted living home or an elderly home, which by the time that the radioactivity gets to you, who knows. but in terms, unfortunately, in San Francisco, fortunately and unfortunately, there have very, very strict building regulations about how high you can grow and that kind of stuff, and we have a really tough problem with that. But Treasure Island's exempt from that, so it's can we just build 40 skyscrapers on it and alleviate some of the housing problems? But yeah, I mean, that makes way more sense than an international airport right now.
Yeah, well, clearly. Oh wow, I had no idea. But obviously, in context of the 30s, whenever that was built, 35, I think, an airport, even though it was close to the city, had, all the airports that were built in that back in the day were basically downtown. Mm-hmm. And it's now that we realize it's such a bad idea, which causes issues even for stuff like Heathrow, which was not downtown, but now is almost central London by definition. What time is it, by the way?
11:30 in the morning.
Still not beer time. I'm not going to do your usual stick that you do with Alex, which is why you're drinking. But I think you like your beer.
Oh, I do. Very much so.
Do you like BrewDog?
I do. I've had a number of their beers when I was living in England. And then occasionally you can find one out here from time to time, but it's rare.
Because I found through Craig, Glenafric Craig on Twitter, that the BA Lounge at GFK, I knew they had BrewDog, but what I didn't know, they have self-service BrewDog bar. And they have the Punk IPA, Lost Lager, Clockwork, Tangerine, and Elvis Juice. They always come up with fantastic names. They're the ones, and probably our audience knows, but I will repeat it, they're the ones who created the beer for BA, the Speedbird 100. Which was made on the Dreamliner with coffee grounds or something. I'm not a huge fan of the Speedbird 100. Have you tried it?
No, I actually haven't tried it, but I think it's a little bit like Betsy, the Cathay Pacific beer, where it might be better in the air than it is down on the ground. But I do remember talking about the can design and thinking it looked like a really crappy American beer, like a Bud Light looking can. So I wasn't a massive fan. I know it was like BA colors, but the silver on it and the color of blue, it looked like, for people that live in California, like Keystone Light, which is not a good beer. So I kind of thought it would look a bit like that.
Well, I tried it in the air and I didn't really enjoy it in the air either. Maybe it's just not a beer for me. I'm not going to bash BrewDog here. Betsy, I haven't tried a version 2.0, which is completely stupid from me because I was actually flying Cathay Pacific a month and a half ago, but I completely forgot about it, probably because I was flying first class and too busy to try to drink the champagne they had on offer. And then when I stepped out, I'm like, why did I not order a Betsy? This is a new one. Anyway, So Patrick at Tarvalon23 on Twitter tried the Speedbird 100 during a BA flight, and he was quite impressed. So again, do not trust my taste. I don't have great taste in food and beer. Beer and food is all Will and Alex. I'm a simpleton when it comes to that. I have very basic taste. I like my basic taste, by the way. When I was recording that podcast with Ben, Travel Man Podcast, I think at the end, which is part 2, so I'm giving a spoiler here, he's asking me, Paul, do you have a favorite food? And I couldn't think of any. I think I said pizza. I'm a very simple guy. I just like simple food, and pizza was, I think it's a good choice. So, do you fly Delta?
I have. They fly to LA a lot, and I fly them there. Cross-con, not so much. But yeah, no, I do from time to time.
Because Delta during CES, the famous electronics show happens in Vegas, they announced quite a number of features. Some of them, they announced them just to recant afterwards. They said that they will have Bluetooth on every seat, and they said, well, no, we're just trialing. We're not sure we're going to actually make the rollout, because that would be really cool to being able to show up with your wireless headphones and just connect to whatever seat you're on. But they have added a button, apparently, or they will add a button on their IFE, binge. So it's not binge drinking, it's binge watching Netflix style shows. The one thing they say, which I don't have an idea how it works, they say you can start watching Delta source content from the moment you check into your flight. So basically, I have access to the IFE at home. So if I check like 3 months before, can I watch everything?
Well, and then that kind of ruins the point of having all that like content when you're a captive audience. But I get it. Like if you want to test things out, not waste your time on the plane, I guess you have to download their specific app, kind of like how Southwest does that as well.
Yeah. That's often the issue, actually, especially when you don't know about it. By the time you're in the flight, they say, yeah, but you should have downloaded the app. I'm like, well, yeah. Happened to me with Lufthansa. So we're going to get to food. Don't worry, we're saying for drinks a little bit more, because you're also the expert on your drinks. There's this company, ERW, based in Denmark, who has launched a series of drinks that is called the Flight Pack. And apparently it's designed as a tailored 3-step hydration solution that will combat the effects of travel fatigue, jet lag, and dehydration. Bear with me with all the marketing BS that I'm going through here. Will, please? So apparently it's 3 powder sachet. The first is called Prep, and you drink it before you board. The second one is called Rest, and the last one is called Wake. And of course, Rest is during the flight, and Wake is after landing. So apparently Prep, the first one is to make you prepare entering the dry and pressurized environment of a plane. Again, I'm just reading out what they're saying here. The Rest drink is meant to help people adjust to flying. Here, I'm even quoting the founder. It calms your nervous system and helps you with natural melatonin content. Apparently it helps you trigger your own melatonin production so you fall asleep, so maybe. And the third one, so the one called Wake, I'm looking at Will's face, he's not very convinced right now, is a protein-based drink that basically helps you recover, and of course it gives you a lot of protein. The same way you would have some protein after a workout, or a run, to just kind of rebuild. Do you really believe any of that thing?
I'm just waiting for the first person who does this to, try and open the plane door at 30,000 feet and blame it on that. Like, are we gonna have an ambient situation where people just completely freak out? I mean, I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's like based on some quasi nutritional science, but yeah, I mean, the golden rule here is sleep, drink water, and don't drink too much alcohol, and you'll be fine. Those are the 3 things that you need to do to not have a terrible travel experience. But I get it. Like, there are these bars in Vegas where if you're the next day, and I think there's one on wheels where they put you on an IV and basically help you just like flush out all the bad things you did the night before. Or, I think that some athletes are doing the same thing as well to get rid of all the lactic acid in their body after stuff like that. And I think not Sergio Aguero, one of the big guys who used to play for Man City, got busted on that and had to serve a ban for doing exactly that, for going to Vegas and being on an IV drip because it was performance enhancing somehow.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, if any of the listeners wants to try the Flight Pack by ERW with Prep, Rest, and Wake, please let us know. She says, the founder says that, to your point, actually, Will, if you're having 1 or 2 drinks, we will actually make you feel better because of our products. However, if you're getting, as you say in Britain or in the States, shit-faced, we can't fix the problem.
Yeah,
this is honest.
There's a product being marketed on pre-roll ads to me like crazy. This is probably telling me more about my browsing history than I should let you know. But it's about, it's a pill or a drink for post drinking, and it boosts an enzyme in your stomach that helps metabolize the alcohol faster. And that goes back to there's a very famous beer company in this country called Sam Adams by Boston Beer Works, and the founder. And I think we talked about this in a Mastication Nation episode a while ago. The founder used to eat dry active yeast before having a heavy night because that would help metabolize the alcohol throughout the night.
I never tried. I'm not sure that yeast actually tastes that good. Well, I prefer my yeast in the alcohol actually already.
Yeah, exactly. I can sure that can cause some pressure issues.
So, one more shout out to Daniel Rogers on Instagram from the UK. It says that we should make a venerable mention for Brussels Airport, and I really do not like Brussels Airport, mainly for the layout when you are non-Schengen. He said that there's a Belgian bistro beer bar in the airport, and he sent us a pic of the beer, and yeah, I will admit, Daniel, that if there is a Belgian bistro beer bar in the airport, plus 10 for the airport. So I might be going in 2020 just to try that one out. Let's go to food. There's some link to Denver. Bear with me. You'll understand why. I don't even know. Have you ever been to Japan, actually?
Yeah. I mean, when I was much younger, and then again when I was a teenager, but I haven't been back as a fully formed adult, which is kind of sad because flights are so cheap from the West Coast. But no, I haven't been to Japan in a very long time.
And do you know Yoshinoya?
No. What's that?
So Yoshinoya is I think it's the second or the first, I can't remember, largest beef ball fast food restaurant. Fast food is maybe a misnomer here, but they do the beef ball, the gyudon. They're a multinational, but they're very, of course, famous in Japan. I say fast food because it's quick, it's low priced. They're literally everywhere in Japan. And you'll understand the link with air travel for those who don't know in a minute. But when they entered the US, they've entered, I think, when I was born in 75, and their first location was actually Denver. I don't know if they're still open. I know that if you want to try, that there's one in Cupertino. That's the closest of you. I don't think there's any in San Francisco. There's a handful in LA and maybe one in Seattle, I think. It's not been super successful in the US, whereas in Japan, they're like literally the biggest chain. They're like everywhere. It's like a Starbucks in London. Like every 2 meters, there's one, right? They're very successful in Hong Kong, however, as well. The point is that one of our listeners, whom we mention quite often, Anita IP2 on Twitter, she flew GL66 from Narita to San Diego. I think that was 2 months ago. And she was able to try Air Yoshinoya. So Yoshinoya has a partnership with JAL, and they do the same kind of beef balls. Of course, they don't give you a ball. They give you like these kind of late night Chinese takeaway boxes, I guess. Then she sent us the pictures of the instructions. Obviously, like in every Japanese airline, they give you instructions how you're supposed to merge all the little bits of food together to actually create the plate. It's really cool. So guys, if you've never flown JAL, but if you have the chance to, the Air Yoshinoya is something you should try. Yoshinoya is pretty good. It's available, by the way, in economy. I'm sure you can actually request that in business or first if you are lucky enough to fly in the front, but it's cute. We had mentioned her, maybe you do remember that. Well, we had mentioned her because she's also the one who had sent a similar set of instructions how to create a Moss burger in flight.
Yeah, she's a big Mastication Nation contributor as well.
So there you go. So the similar thing that she had an entire instruction leaflet to how to create a Moss burger, the same applies to this. It's almost like overkill. They explain you every single step. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I have to put the stuff in the box at the beginning or something. But it's really nice. I've been lucky to try it once.
I'm just waiting for SAS to do the same model. Like a true IKEA piece of flat pack furniture, you're left with a bunch of leftover pieces and you have to use an Allen key for some reason.
But you know what? I will, however, say, I was really not being condescending when I said there's too many steps, like remove the tray from the box. That's literally a step. Because I've been to, I think it was Korean Air? Yeah, it must have been Korean Air. I was served the Korean option. I can't remember what it was because it's been a few years. And I literally didn't know what to do with all the ingredients in front of me. There are like so many little sachets. And I was like, how am I supposed to eat this? At first, I was looking at the person next to me, trying to gather what I should be. And then, thank God, the flight attendant came and explained to me what to do. So it's actually nice to have the instructions. And it's really cute.
Was it all
They're really made in a very cute
bancha,
way.
all the things on the side?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, absolutely. But sometimes there's an order or stuff, what you're supposed to put on rice or not, etc. I know, because having lived in Japan, I have some knowledge about that. But from Korean food, I absolutely don't. Since we're Japanese food, and then we'll go back to food in planes, I just want to make a shout out to friends of mine. They have a restaurant called Tama. It's in Shibuya in Tokyo. It's my hangout. If you want to find me when I am in Tokyo, I'm at Tama. It's Okinawan food restaurant. Okinawa would please Alex. That is in Shibuya. They just got their Michelin star.
Wow.
Which is completely insane, because for me, going there is going at midnight and having food at the bar until 4 a.m. because I'm jet lagged and I never can associate the food, although it's amazing with the Michelin star. So I'm so happy for them. Shout out to Tama. Actually, the name of the guy who created it is Tama. It's really cool. I highly recommended. And you can meet stars now, because a Michelin star, there was this guy next to me at the bar taking pictures, and he had a small, not a disposable camera, but like a 35 millimeter camera, but not an expensive one, not an SLR, something back from the 90s or something. And I was curious. I said, what is it? And I chatted with him, super cool guy, for like 4 minutes before like a bunch of guys started asking him for selfies, and I didn't realize who he was. And I still really, because I don't follow pop music or whatever a lot, but it was Mark Ronson, the DJ, and super cool guy. Yeah, so Tama, not only for the food, but also for the stars. You could even meet me. I'm not a star, but why not? So, since we talk about food, I mean, we've done an episode already about food. Both, actually, the most important one is on Mastication Nation, the L episode, because for those who don't know, Mastication Nation is every letter of the alphabet as an episode, and L was for Layovers. Thank you again, Will, for inviting us. I mean, inviting me, because your brother obviously was already there. And we also talked about food, obviously, on episode 65 when you were 2 years ago. But can you do us a little recap of why food is so different in planes, or why does it taste like crap, basically, sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great to have you over, and it was a great crossover episode to get some of the Layovers listeners joining on the Mastication Nation bandwagon. And for those who do listen, we are on hiatus because we've done the whole round of the alphabet, and we will be coming back in 2020 with new episodes. Just give us time. But the Layovers episode, Paul was very kind to join us. And what I did was give a fairly in-depth overview of why airplane food is such, maligned crap most of the time. So to those who've already listened to it, let me just recap a little bit of it. But basically the upshot of the science is that due to the conditions of a plane, the fact that it's dry air, low pressure, loud engine noises, and noise does make a massive factor. And, the humidity is actually at 12%, you're in a scenario where you're just not going to be able to allow your body to react to food, as it were, on the ground. And really interesting is that, the noise and the humidity are the ones that can make the biggest impact, as well as the pressure. But you're pressurized at 6,000 feet, which is the same as, Johannesburg, which is going to make a difference on how your brain works, but that's more on the alcohol side. But as far as the food's concerned, you're about 12 to 20% roughly going to affect your ability to pick up certain kinds of flavors. And so one of the things that we talked about in the Layovers episode was talking about what food does well versus what food doesn't do well. And Paul, you mentioned that you had recently at that time on Garuda, one of your all-time favorite meals that you felt was just, top class. And if I remember correctly, it was a nasi goreng. Yeah.
Yep. Good memory.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Variation. And basically spice does really, really well at elevation or on a plane, whilst some savory stuff can get a little stodgy. Sweet really takes the edge off. That's why ice cream doesn't taste so sweet when you're up there. And your fruits and your pastas, they don't do very well. They're really easy to make in bulk, and that's one of the other major issues, is that when you're on a plane, obviously they're making hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of meals that then are quick frozen and sent up onto the plane. And so There's a science behind it and there's an economics behind it, but there are airlines out there that are really trying to combat this. And obviously you have planes or airlines that have onboard chefs or planes that, the first class have a bit more wiggle room with what kind of equipment they can use. But for those all traveling in the back end of the plane, it's a little bit more hit and miss.
I'm still expecting one aircraft manufacturer to allow open flames in their kitchen, because you were mentioning to us that the way they were reheating food, because most of the food comes cold, there's some frozen as well, but comes cold. They use conduction microwaves, if I'm correct?
Yeah. Basically, they're just glorified microwaves. And as anyone who wasn't either stoned or drunk, most things coming out of a microwave do have a pretty crappy texture and flavors are not great, and some things get hotter than the others, and why is the container hotter than the food? That kind of stuff can happen. So yeah, they're working with not the best environment as well.
I really want to see open flame. It will never happen, guys, obviously, but that would be so fun. But if I remember correctly as well, were you not telling me that you almost never actually eat plain food, not maybe for the reasons you just mentioned, but because you'd rather either eat in the airport before or maybe take on board some stinky chili with pineapple pizza or something, right?
I mean, look, the people that take things on board flights, you've got to play by the rules of common decency. Do not bring durian. Do not bring, Stilton. If you are, bringing on some fish, I'm not going to be happy either. But, you can pretty much get, on board as long as it travels pretty well. That's fine. Yeah, I don't generally, unless I'm like having a business class experience or more, I generally don't eat on planes. I eat at the airport for a couple of reasons. One, all the aforementioned reasons I just mentioned. Two, I don't want to be on a plane and, a scenario happens where there's only 3 bathrooms for 200 people. So I want to know what's going on before I get on a plane, if that's too much information. But
you're absolutely right. It's a good strategy.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the downside of this is that most American airports are just like the same, same
that's how it feels
restaurants over and over and over again, so that gets a little boring. But some of them do have some variations, and so I like to try and see what there is and what I can get. Yes, it's all going to be overpriced, but that's the price you pay for being in an airport.
Yeah, but we were preparing a bit the show with Will before, of course, we recorded, and we both, of course, found the same stories, which means great minds, because there was this alternative for those who actually don't fly or for those who actually adore plain food. Now, in Asia, there is a way to actually order plain food in a restaurant. So first of all, are they insane? Second of all, do you think it's really the same? They say it's the same, but do you think they will actually apply the same recipe? And third of all, would you go?
So yeah, this is in relation to AirAsia, the low-cost carrier out of Malaysia, which, I have no problem with. They're a decent airline that, seems to do what they need to do. And I was reading this Washington Post article about how they have opened up a restaurant in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, that is recreating, and I'm using this in air quotes, your favorite airline food. I mean, first of all, who has favorite airline food? It's interesting. It's an interesting concept. It's called Santan, which apparently is the same name as their in-flight food experience on the plane. But when I first read it, I thought it said Satan, because only Satan would want to have, plain food when they didn't have to have it. Like, what kind of sadomasochist are you that you have any choice, especially in Kuala Lumpur, where you can eat anything? Is like, nah, I want something that tastes like reheated barf. I'm like, let's see what. Yeah, so I was reading the article and they were saying that some of the classics are going to include Pak Nasa Nasi Lemak, which is coconut rice with chili and chicken, and it's fairly common. Uncle Chin's chicken rice with a roasted chicken, seasoned rice, and chili and ginger sauce, which I think we've all had a variation of. It's all stuff coming from their sphere of influence in the region. So, you're talking about Cambodia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. And I was looking at the price and they were saying the meals cost about 12 Malaysian ringgit, or about $2.90, which sounds really cheap. But then I was reading further in the article saying that the average person can go elsewhere and it costs $2.50. So it's a bit of a premium. So I don't know, Paul, would you put yourself through that?
Well, look, first, probably yes, just because I wanted to try. I don't know if I'll be a kale, But that's the second part. Fernandez is the founder of the airline. Very successful airline. Yes. Very reliable, actually, as well. It's a low cost, but it's a very good airline. And he's an innovator. He's always been pushing the limits. He wants to make this as a franchise. He wants to open like globally more than 100. So at least in the region, there will be other opportunities. I go very often to Manila. Probably is going to be open in Singapore. Probably the price will be like 10x in Singapore because that's Singapore for you. But will I try? Yeah. And there's one option that made me really kind of think about that I want to see. He says you can pre-order, like you would pre-order an Air Asia meal. You can pre-order a meal in the restaurant as well. By the way, I think it's only part of the menu that will be airplane food. The rest will be kind of ordinary local food. So, but still, I think, go ahead.
So 2 things. One, I think that this ties back to what we were talking about earlier about what food is successful and not successful on planes. Without exception, Eastern or Southeast Asian food does exponentially better in planes than Western food. So if you ever have a choice, always go with the Eastern food, just because the spices and my cat just jumped on the table. Sorry about that. The chili and everything holds up, and the savoriness of it holds up compared to Western food. Second of all, I really hope they go full force with the idea of the plain food. And then when you go to collect your food, they're like, sorry, we're out of chicken. And it's like, can I give you the other options? Like, I ordered the chicken. What the hell?
Can I have the lasagna?
Exactly.
On the menu.
Exactly.
It's always on the menu.
Lasagna is always on the menu.
Don't you agree with me that in any airline, I mean, of course, we know there's cultural differences. You just mentioned Asia, but it's usually beef, fish, chicken, and pasta. Let's make 4. Yeah. That's basically always what they rotate around.
It's easy. They know that the most people are going to want that. Like if you start putting like duck or veal on the menu, it's going to be a situation where no one's going to want it and you're going to have a bunch of waste. You know, we know that the pilots they're not allowed to have the same meal just in case one of them gets food poisoning and the other one needs to have the separate meal just to be safe. But yeah, it's always those few. I see pork less, and that's just because with a global audience, that one's going to be the most difficult of the big 4, shall we say, of like beef, fish, chicken, and pork. I know fish is a broad term, but I get that as well.
You just said broad term, and you probably heard it from the episode 101 when I was describing my experience in Vietnam Airlines, and the menu just said meat. And I was like, okay, I was just gonna go along with that.
Well, now that we're in the world of Impossible Burgers and Beyond Food, it's like meat and fake meat.
I think I just done Impossible Pork or something. I read something the other day that pork is coming online as well, which is the biggest consumed meat in the world. Obviously, even if you just said it, it's true, the Muslim world doesn't eat it. It's still, by numbers, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's the largest meat in the world. So if Impossible, I don't know which of the two have done it, but if that comes out of the market, it could be something, I don't know.
Yeah, they do. So one of them, Beyond already does sausages that I think are meant to be fake pork. But yeah, to your point, cows are just so useful beyond their meat for, milk and beasts of burden. Pork, generally not. Besides being garbage disposals, pigs are just kind of fattened up to be eaten. That's why I guess the consumption is so much higher on them in the regions, not obviously Jewish or Muslim, but everywhere else in the world, it's eaten so much. I know that chicken, obviously, in the U.S. is massive and elsewhere, and our beef consumption in this country is just out of control, but that's not the standard for the rest of the world. Not everyone is having a double quarter pounder, with cheese every lunchtime. So, that's a rare occasion.
Well, Tony Fernandez, the CEO of AirAsia and of that restaurant, has a dream of opening one of these new restaurants in Times Square. So probably at some point he will be in the US. Mm-hmm. And to your point, no matter how we can mock a little bit these airplane inspired, because again, I'm not sure they will be exactly the same as per your explanation earlier to have taste on the ground. I'm pretty sure that they're still healthier than a triple whooper or something that you find in a. So it's a good option. I will. So to your question earlier, I will try it. You just mentioned food poisoning. You have the same knowledge as me. We learned in the movie Airplane that if you give 2 pilots something that is bad, there's no more pilots.
Yes.
Who's actually flying the plane. Right?
Surely you can't be serious.
I was waiting for that one. So have you ever been sick from airplane food yourself? Is that the origin of why you're not doing it as well, or not really?
I think I have when I was younger. I have been sick on a plane for other reasons. That's not the greatest experience of all time. So no, I don't think I've ever been food poisoned on a plane because then the entire plane would be going down, and I've never seen like 30 people all rush to the bathroom at the same time.
Because there was an NBC News investigation, an article that came out a few weeks ago, which looked into the airline catering industry in the US. And there's something that I didn't know under FDA rules. So FDA is the Food and
Drug Administration.
because obviously these two go together. In Colorado, they do.
Yes.
The FDA rules are actually quite loose. The agency only has to inspect airline caterers every 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
And they can randomly go into plane when time, this is a quote, when time and opportunity allow. So it's not that much, because I think the food code in the US for restaurants, you surely know that better than me, is much more stringent. They go like at least every 6 months or something. Or at least they should go every.
Well, because you got to remember
6 months
that those are city and state officials that have to do that. So when you go to a restaurant in San Francisco, there is a board of certification from San Francisco, which the airlines don't have to abide by because they're not. They're being checked federally, not at a state or a city level.
Well, to your point, in the same article that I read, they say that LA County has 500 health inspectors. If the FDA for the entire airline, has basically 600. So they don't have a lot of hands to actually go and try to check. But it's still, because there were apparently cases last year, 2019, of food poisoning. There's always never been like an outbreak of people dying. Let's not exaggerate. But I didn't realize that the rules were so loose. There were some interesting numbers. They say the 3 biggest airline caterers in the US are LSG Sky Chefs, which is owned by Lufthansa, and it's larger than the 2 others that I will mention combined. Gate Gourmet, which used to be, I think, owned by the Swissair, but now is probably owned by also some kind of private equity. And the last one is Flying Food Group. And interestingly, so the first one, Sky Chefs, they produce in Chicago only, produces 12 to 15,000 meals a day for only one location. The smallest one, Flying Food Group, produces US-wide 300,000 meals and snacks daily. So it's a lot of food being produced and not a lot of checks. And I'm not here finger pointing, that they are doing something bad, but it's true that I was staggered. Apparently the EU is a little bit more stringent, but I don't know by how much. It's a $6 billion industry. We should go into airline catering food, Will.
Yeah, and I know that I used to, in a previous life, worked in ground transportation at Heathrow, and I would see the sort of the mass that was going through there, specifically for BA and Virgin. The thing I find interesting is that with things like Freedom Routes and Open Skies, where someone like Emirates, who wants to centralize all their food out of the Middle East, if they have the ability to go Dubai, London, LA, who are they relying on for their food? They're going to have to outsource it to somewhere else, and you're going to lose control. So it could be a massive concern for somebody who, we'll get onto it in a little bit, but some of the guys who pride themselves on extraordinarily good in-flight food and in-flight beverages to have to then relinquish some of the control unless they start, outsourcing it. Because obviously Donata, who I used to work for, was owned by Emirates Group, and therefore they had locations elsewhere. But at a certain point, I don't know what the cost looks like for the food.
Yeah, I mean, we all probably have had this type of feelings, at least. And the most recent for me was probably Cathay Pacific leaving San Francisco when I saw you with Alex's birthday this past summer. No, that was not that, but that was American. So which one was it? No, it was January. So it was a year ago now. Wow, time flies. When I flew Cathay Pacific away from San Francisco, and the food leaving from San Francisco compared to the one from Hong Kong was staggeringly different. The quality was good. I'm not talking about the quality. There was no food poisoning or something, but you could feel that there was a degree of difference that was quite massive. And that's probably to your point. They have to outsource in some location where it doesn't make sense for maybe 2 flights a day. I don't know how many they have out of San Francisco to actually create their own cuisine with a chef. They basically outsource to whoever is available and at the good price.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're right. You make a lot of sense here. Since we're talking food poisoning, what do you think about that story that you've also read about these pigs in Bali?
Yeah, I saw this. It's absolutely hilarious. So Bali, the airport authority in Bali, for some reason, struck up a relationship with local farmers. And, we're all very conscious about food waste and not wanting to see meals that were not being eaten on the flight go to waste, had been providing the leftovers, not to the locals, but to local pig farmers in Bali so that they could eat it. And they had just been told by the local government to knock it off for a couple of different reasons. My favorite reason is that it sounds like the beginning plot of the movie 12 Monkeys. It's ridiculous. So basically the concern is that due to concerns about the rising cases of African swine fever, the pigs are no longer going to get the food because obviously the food's coming from all over the world. And as you've seen in all of these contagion movies and 12 Monkey movies, the fastest way for a plague to spread is through planes, apparently. So pigs being banned from eating leftover airplane food does sound like, the exposition at the beginning of one of those really big, bad plague movies.
Yeah. Now the question is, if they think that the food coming from... Now, of course, okay, the leftovers might have been touched by a human being because they are leftovers. Yes. But my first thought when I read the article is that the food that has not been used was given to pigs and pigs were in danger. So my first thought was so I'm in danger if I'm trying any of the food.
Exactly.
Because if the pigs cannot have it, I can't have it either.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that the funny thing about that, the pigs and the food was that, they talk about Iberico ham and how that tastes amazing because it's eating on the nuts and the acorns in the forests. And, it tastes amazing because of that. And can you imagine them making a custom leg of ham from these pigs? And it's flavors of the airline. And it's your reheated chicken or your lasagna because it's always there.
See, there's a business model right there for airline catering. We have it. We almost have it.
Mr. Fernandez, we got an idea for you.
You and me, because you're the food guy. I can talk to the airlines, but I need the food guy to give me credibility. There's a ranking I've read, interesting ranking that I was not aware of, still talking about food. And this is a US ranking, so it's only for US airlines. Sorry, international friends like me. They give stars according to the health score of an airline. So what kind of food they provide. And I found it pretty interesting. They base that on multiple criteria. The calories being one, so it has to be healthy. It has not to be too caloric. Thank you. I'm inventing words as I go, clearly, here on this podcast as well. Episode, remember, so calorific, you can use that. So the scores for 2019-2020, North America, first is Air Canada, 4 stars. They say your best bets. Eat the Liberté Greek yogurt, avocado smash box, and Pangoa bowl and Campbell's chicken noodle soup. Number 2 with the same number, equal number 1, Alaska Airlines, 4 stars. Apparently, you should try the Mediterranean tapas. The reason Alaska is actually as high, and thank God Alex is not recording with us today, is because Virgin America for 6 years in a row was the highest, and they kind of onboarded that culture of healthy food on board. Then we have JetBlue, and they say the best bet is anything but the chocolate chip cookies. So don't have chocolate chip cookies on JetBlue. I'm sure they're actually very good. They're probably just very fatty.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to inverse it and say what domestic airline consistently has the best food as far as enjoyable, JetBlue is going to be up near the top because of their relationship with, and we've talked about this on Mastication Nation before, and I'm sure Alex is on here, about their relationships with some of the restaurants and even Mamafuku and Milk Bar and stuff like that. Those relationships are pre-existing and great.
Delta comes next. Best bet is the protein box and the Greek meze plate. United comes afterwards. The best bet is the beef jerky and hummus. And by the way, I didn't know that United in economy in long haul to Honolulu, they don't serve a meal in economy, and they say that, it's not international, which sucks. But anyway, that's the reality of U.S. domestic flying, I guess. American Airlines next. The best bet is the Continental Breakfast. Frontier with the Kind Bar. Allegiant is only 1.9 star. We are entering really bad territory here. Your best bet is the hummus here as well. Spirit, the Fly Fit protein mix. Hawaiian is really low. It's the pre to last, with the best bet being the Kitchen and Love quinoa with artichoke. And the last of all these airlines is Southwest at 1.7 stars. And your best bet is to simply take the pretzels.
Yeah. I mean, Southwest is cheap for a reason, but I mean, some of those other airlines are terrible and cheap, like Allegiant. It's an interesting one as far as what they're considering as healthy. Almost all of those had a commonality of Mediterranean and Greek food, like hummus or mezza or tapa,
right.
Whatever else it might be, the artichokes as well. I mean, it's an interesting model. And I know that whenever I've got food, it's generally been like a protein pack, and it's been your olives, your hummus, your carrot sticks, whatever it might be. So there's something to that.
You're right. Oh, see, this is why I need Will, because I didn't even see that trend in all this.
And you
I
have
was just reading it out because I
you.
found it. But it's true that I will actually circle around these type of foods when I see them in a menu, because this is what I actually like also eating, simply because I find them good and usually healthy. You mentioned many times, Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat. So have you actually eaten these things? Have you tried them?
Yeah.
What do you think? Are they good?
I prefer Impossible over Beyond. Beyond is in a lot more supermarkets these days, but Impossible, I think, are a much better, product for burgers. And we talked about this on one of the last episodes of Mastication Nation. So Beyond uses pea protein and Impossible uses soy protein, which allows it to look like it's bleeding, which is as much as helping you overcome the meatness of it all. But yeah, no, I was in Yosemite a few months ago. It was like November with a bunch of friends, and one of my friends is vegetarian. And when we stopped in the store, we, in the middle of nowhere, California. Sorry, Alex Ostreicher. I know Manteca is not the middle of nowhere, but he actually, I'll come back to that in a second. But one of our friends was vegetarian, and so we were able to, in Manteca, buy a bunch of Beyond Burger stuff. So it's everywhere. You can find it in any supermarket, and it's decent. I don't really care for it unless I have to, but it's fine. The reason I wanted to come back to that was that I was driving with a bunch of friends of mine from San Francisco to Yosemite, and we stopped in Manteca. What happened was our friend Alex Ostreicher, who's contributed to you guys as well, lives up in Sacramento, and he flew down there, which is about 45 minutes on a prop plane, and we picked him up at literally the airport has one building, and then you go from there. And it's a company, and why am I drawing a blank on their name? I've said it a million times. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. I will figure it out in a minute. But the flights from these really obscure places are super cheap because they're paid by the government to maintain strategically important routes. And so you pay $50, and then the government gives them $500. And so you can go to places like, fly from LA to the middle of nowhere, Nevada, or from Spokane, Washington to Idaho for absolutely nothing. And you get to fly in a prop plane, and there's 2 people on board with you. And so everyone's talking about their own private jets and paying thousands and thousands of dollars. Nah, you want to get your prop plane and go from middle of nowhere to middle of nowhere. But sorry, that was a little off tangent. But yeah, Beyond Burgers and Impossible Burgers. I'm waiting for the first airline to pick them up. I don't know if they have yet.
Air New Zealand has Impossible Burger.
Oh, really?
I haven't flown Air New Zealand, so I haven't tried it. But that was my next question. What do you think about the products? Because I'm much in favor of going Beyond Meat. Haha, smart marketing right there. For climate reasons, for environmental reasons, probably also for ethical reasons. So I understand all this. But what do you think about, is it really healthy?
Both Beyond and Impossible have come out, especially now they've gone into the fast food markets, have come out and said, because vegetarians and vegans were like, what are you doing putting this fake meat protein into a regular burger? We still can't have that. And the marketing's been smart. Just this isn't for you guys. You guys are already making quote unquote smart decisions with your lives. This is for mom and pop, middle of nowhere America to get them to stop eating meat as much as they are, to try, have something that they're used to. Everything else about the Whopper is normal. It's the normal bread, the normal lettuce, the normal sauce, the normal cheese, so on and so forth. But the meat's different. And that's going to be the easiest way to migrate people over to not eating as much meat. They're not going after the vegetarian and vegan market. That's just not the play here.
Yeah.
It's not about whether it's healthy or not. And yes, Impossible and Beyond, their caloric intake and their nutritional values are no real better than meat. It's more to try and get people to eat less red meat and see what the environmental impact might be. Also, let's stop cutting down the rainforest for cows to graze on.
Livestock.
And so let's see how much we can impact by doing this.
And do you think, you've not flown either, Air New Zealand, do you think Impossible Burger or Beyond Meat would fly well? The flavors that come out of it will actually work in a flight, do you think?
So I'm obviously, without looking at the information, I wouldn't know. I would say that the burger would not do well, but the fact is that you can use Beyond Food and Impossible Food as a ground meat substitute. And what have we been joking about being the constant on our old airplanes is lasagna. And so if you replace the ground beef there with Impossible, that's a really good option because that's where you're really not going to notice the difference in flavor. And so I would suggest if it's in pasta or if it's in lettuce cups or, some variety of mixed together where you don't need that flame grilled or that grilled flavor, it's going to do well. It's going to do fine. You're not going to notice it.
Well, I'm telling you, we should have opened a business like that for airlines because what you just said about adding non-meat based but meat look-alike food with pasta, Cathay Pacific just did it. Now they have a plant-based blend that they add to some of their spaghetti pasta on some routes. I think it's only for the moment business class, but still. So they're going that way. It's to replace not ground beef, but pork. See, we should have thought about that a year ago, would have been billionaires by now. But you spotted an interesting ranking about the best food catering in flights in 2019. As always, caution with all these rankings, but any of the rankings can be suspicious, but they're always simply fun to talk about. So can you tell us which airline comes on top?
Yeah.
And maybe if you agree.
I don't know where this specific website pulled its info from, but on first glance, it looked pretty on point. I think it was somebody who had taken all the Skytrax information and pulled out their own learnings from it because Skytrax doesn't have its own food rankings. But the upshot at the top level, what this guy has done, what ranked the best for first class business, premium economy, and economy. And we can go through the top few on each one, but at a top level, the number one food experience for first class was Air France, which I know you're a big fan of some of their food.
I've never flown first class with Air France, but I've been told repeatedly that there's a notable difference and it's by far the best. So I'm pretty sure that it must be, but I sadly do not fly SkyTeam anymore, but somebody will offer me, our CEO of Air France, I'm sorry, I criticized you in the last episode, but can you simply invite me? So Air France, and then
so second and third on the first class options were Singapore Airlines and Etihad, which don't surprise me at all.
Look, Etihad, I flew first class once. It was in one of our shows, I don't remember which one, and I mentioned that the beef, I know it's simply beef, but the beef I had there was the best beef I ever had in a plane. As a reminder, the worst beef I ever had in a plane was on KLM in business, but still, we'll never eat beef on KLM ever. I still can, when you have these really bad experiences, your memory can still be triggered, and I just don't want to talk about this. Hold on, let me open the website because I want to just take a look. The one thing that strikes me there is that Cathay Pacific isn't on that list of first class onboard catering because I just did it like a month and a half ago. That was really good. Then for business, what is the...
So the number one for business actually it consistently does well across the board and every class is ANA and then Qatar and then Hainan, sorry. ANA, I've only ever heard good things.
I've taken a few, I think 3 times in business that I've done, 4 times probably because of a return. The food was excellent. So yeah, Qatar as well. I fly a lot Qatar because One World is a good way to actually accrue points and they're fabulous. Hainan I never tried, but
I don't know anybody who's flown Hainan recently. Yeah. And then jumping down to
premium economy.
So the top 3 are Austrian, Singapore, and then Air New Zealand. And so this is the first entry for Austrian. Have you flown them?
A long time ago and only in economy in Europe, or maybe once in business in Europe. I have a hard time connecting with that airline, let's say. It's really funny. The interiors are, you said earlier that the food in an airplane also is impacted by how it looks and maybe how the environment is. And the environment in Austrian, at least in short haul, because I've never done long haul, the plane is a mix of red, blue, and attendants in full red. It's very disturbing. So I'm not sure if I would appreciate the food, but I'm sure they're very good if they are number one here. So I'm not dissing them. And for economy, so that's the one I'm interested to see what economy boils.
Yeah, and so again, this is the only reason I'm questioning these rankings is Cathay doesn't rank anywhere at any point, which unless they've gone seriously downhill, I have a problem.
That's not possible.
Exactly. So the top 3 for economy are EVA, Singapore, and JAL. And so I know EVA has been doing a massive push on the West Coast. They are really stepping up their marketing, and they're the official, if anybody knows this obscure fact, they are the official airlines of the Oakland Athletics baseball team.
Oh,
and so
didn't know that.
I've not flown them, but I know that you guys had some experiences with them recently.
Yeah, but I've never flown them in economy. I've flown them only once in my life, only one flight. It was in business. The food was good. I wouldn't rank it first. The experience was meh. But yeah, I've heard as well, actually, there are a lot of fans. It's like Delta in the US. People are fans of EVA, and there must be a reason. So I'm sure they're good. Strikingly, in economy, very often, and I think Europe ranking kind of proves it if we were to go down, usually Asian airlines fare very well.
Exactly. If you were to
economy.
If you were to force rank all of these across the different classes, a US airline doesn't even come into any of them. And besides Austrian doing pretty well periodically, Turkish is doing pretty well, and then British Airways 10th for first class and Lufthansa 6th for first class. It is all either Middle Eastern or Asian airlines, which just goes to back up what we're talking about as far as the food. Obviously, these airlines do have Western meals or domestic where they're flying out of. But generally, I think, A, the care that these airlines are taking on their food is better. And B, they just know what's going to hold up. I'm sure every single one of these in economy will have the quintessential random roll sitting on your tray that you can or cannot eat. But everything else, obviously, rice dishes do really well, and anything with spice does well as well. So I need to do a little bit more diving on this because I want to check this guy to see where he's getting his information from. But it was surprisingly hard to find rankings from an official whatever source on airline food for the last, obviously we only just got into 2020, so maybe they're still compiling them. All I know is that, the US airlines suck.
But then again, for food, the issue is probably as well, to your point earlier, about multiple sources depending on the routes, especially when we're talking long haul, which means that it could be variable. It's really hard for food to kind of have like consistency over every single day of every single year of every single route. So I think these kind of rankings you just mentioned are fun. They probably have a bit of truth.
Yeah.
I mean, when I see the rankings, economy, Eva Air, Singapore, number 2, Japan Airlines 3, Thai, Qatar, ANA, Turkish, Qantas, I'm like, yeah, probably this is actually pretty correct.
Yeah.
Right?
Whether or not the actual ordering is correct, again, the only thing, unless this person, Cathay murdered their puppy or something like that,
Yeah, that's the only one. That's the one that also I found very strange not to find Cathay in any of these rankings, because I would always say it's top 5 for almost everything, whether it's the seats, the service. It's a bit strange. But other than that, I think they are pretty good. So, guys, if anyone listening has better rankings or think that is completely wrong or wants to absolutely defend one of the US airlines for being amazing at their food delivery, I mean, feel free to contact us or contact Will. You can also shout at Will, actually, if you want. There's a website called airlinemeals.net. This is basically a repository for people to put pictures of their food, of their tray on the whatever route they're doing. It's sadly a bit badly designed because it's kind of hard to find. If you say, I want to see Cathay Pacific Economy in 2019, the search box is a bit basic. But if you're really into looking at food and want to see what you might be having in a flight, I think airlinemeals.net is one of the destinations. Otherwise, you have these crazy bloggers talking about their food experiences. Did you have any memorable food experience in a flight? Or not, actually, in the past year? So
actually, it kind of ties nicely into the airport of the day. It was not my best experience. It was one of my worst. And I know I don't want to put down a company that you guys have talked about a lot, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think that I was the catalyst for a change, and I kind of feel good about that. So unlike you guys, I didn't get Priority Pass free with my cards, my credit card. Okay. I paid for it, and I paid the base level for it to just see if I liked it. If I liked it, I would upgrade to the higher levels. And I was at Denver Airport, who does not have a lounge, does not have a Priority Pass lounge. Oh, wow. They do have a relationship with a restaurant, with a steak restaurant there. And, you show your card and you get a discount off your meal. So here's what happens. It was February. We were snowed in. We were stuck at the airport for like 5 hours. And so myself and a coworker went to the restaurant, and I was like, okay, yeah, cool. We'll go there, kill some time. Show them my card. Okay, you're going to get $25 off your meal. Great. What then transpired when I got home was, okay, yeah, we've taken the $25 off your meal. But because you had the base level of Priority Pass, they charged me $32.
What?
Yeah, they charged me $32 to access the lounge, i.e. go to the restaurant. And so I tried to show them, I tried to talk to the customer service about this, that if I was a regular passenger or a regular airport customer and didn't show my pass, I would have saved more money than showing me my priority pass that I had to pay for. And I completely forget what customer service is like outside of the US. It's like, sorry, sir, you effed up. This is your fault for not reading the paperwork. And I just stomped my feet, never paid my bill with priority pass. And then I get an alert from them 6 weeks ago saying they're shutting down the Denver relationship with that restaurant. And what I found out, finally, I got through to the VP of marketing, who was very apologetic about this, the VP of customer service, and was like, we outsource a lot of these relationships with the restaurants. We have a team that deals with customer procurement on your side. We also have a team that deals with customer procurement for lounges and restaurants, and they just weren't talking to each other. And so, yes, you got charged more for sharing your priority pass. So I had a decent airport steak at Denver Airport, but then got charged more than as if I was a normal person by sharing my priority pass card. So that was my worst travel food experience.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's bad. So thank you on behalf of all of us who actually have spotted that, because it's really bad when that happens. Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. I must admit that I don't really recall one as a bad one, to be honest. They were like a lot of meh one, like some stuff that was kind of bland, meaning that I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, and I kind of forgot as soon as I ate it, right? You know what I mean? Like, I had food because I needed food because it's an 11-hour flight, and I had something, which, by the way, guys, for those who are a long-time listener, every time I don't mention the food in a review that I do, it kind of means that it was not great, it was not bad, it was just like you eat something and you forget about it as soon as you finish it, right? Have you ever flown over like the 24th or the 25th of December in your life, like a pure Christmas type of flight?
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% have flown on the 24th. I also have flown on New Year's Day as well. Or New Year's Eve.
Do you remember any type of maybe happenings, or maybe especially with the food stuff that they did extra or special because it was that day?
No.
Either out of pure courtesy or just because they had a special menu?
It would have been London to Boston that I was doing that flight at that time. And the only thing I remember that was specific to it being that time of year was that the pilot would get on board and be like, ladies and gentlemen, we saw a large man flying past the cockpit with reindeer. And like stuff like that. Like that, they did that one time, which I thought was really cute. But as far as food is concerned, I don't think I remember anything specific. I think it was Virgin. I was flying Virgin Atlantic at that time because my dad was working for them. It was like 10 years ago. And that was cute.
Yeah, I've done quite a few, usually short haul. I've done a few long hauls. This year I was not flying that day. I came back, for those who keep track with my travels. I was flying on the 24th. I came back on the 24th from Nur Sultan, ex-Astana, with Air Astana. Mm-hmm. They do not celebrate Christmas, which meant there was no special food, but maybe I'll mention it in a minute. But I wanted to mention, because we're still close to Christmas. Of course, Christmas is in a year, but it just happened as well. Since you mentioned Virgin Atlantic, I spotted that they were offering in all classes special menu for the Christmas period. I think it was only 10 days. I might be wrong. Like, I think in upper class, which is their business class, they had roast turkey, which is very appropriate, obviously, for the Christmas season. Mm-hmm. They probably still had lasagna, right? Let's be honest. Yeah. And I think they ended that with the Christmas macarons with brandy ganache, which sounds really nice. And on premium and economy, they had a festive roulade, which is, again, a turkey breast, but rolled with sage and onion stuffing. That must be also kind of nice. So I've never flown, believe it or not. I mean, our listeners know that I've never flown Virgin Atlantic in my life. It's a miss. I know. I remember flying Lufthansa last year, also it was still called Astana and Nur Sultan, also to Kazakhstan. And they had, and I mentioned it in the past, they had roast goose.
Oh, wow.
And that was super nice to have actual roast goose with red cabbage and dumplings in a business class. I don't know the situation in economy. And I think they've done it again this year. I think it's something they do every year. Air France, what I know is that for all classes during the 24th and the 25th, they give you champagne for free.
Nice.
That's pretty nice. Yeah, it's very French champagne, and the Swiss does fondue and alpine milk chocolate, so you can have like some very fun stuff as well. And I was flying, I know that a lot of people want that review, and I'm not going to give it, but people will hate me for it. But I was flying Emirates, the new first class from Tokyo to Dubai. Honestly, Will can trust me. After flying this, I can stop flying forever. Nothing can ever top that seat, top that experience. But on the menu, on the food, they had a special menu in all classes, actually. So you would open the menu, and on each of the items that were special for Christmas, they had a little Christmas tree. Very cute. For instance, for appetizers, it was prawn cocktail, poached king prawns with Mary Rose sauce and fennel with lemon and herbs. For the main course, that's in first class, guys. For the main course, it was roast turkey, again, very appropriate, slice and serve with chestnut stuffing, cranberry julienne, potato wedges, and Brussels sprouts with turkey rashers and cream. When I mentioned this during the Plain Podcast UK Christmas episode, and I want to hear your point of view, do you really think that potato wedges with roast turkey for Christmas is appropriate?
No, it should be roast potatoes, or if in the American side, mashed potatoes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
They all reacted to
Exactly,
that
that's weird.
Actually, I got that and it was very good. And the dessert for the Christmas was called Santa's Belt. It was not a belt, it was layered chocolates and cranberry cake topped with cranberry glaze. And I tried it and it was really good. Since I just did Aristana, what did I try? I don't remember which one I had, actually. Probably the curried prawns with Indian biryani rice. I think that was the one. Anyway, the food on Aristana, it's a 5-star airline. It's the first time I fly more than 4 hours. This is a 6 hours, 7 hours flight back to London and 2 there. And in both legs, the food was absolutely excellent. I highly recommend you guys to fly Aristana. Of course, you probably have to go to Kazakhstan to justify that, though they are trying at some point to play to be probably like an Emirates, also kind of doing like a, connectivity between Asia and Europe mostly. And yeah, it's a great airline. The sad thing is there was char grilled beef and chicken kebab, and I really wanted to try that, and they had run out of it. And we were 3 people. So I was like, what? Probably because we were 3 the entire cabin. So probably they had one of each or something. And when they came to me as the second person, well, it was too late because probably the 2 other guys, maybe they had 2 and the 2 other guys had taken kebab. And I was like left with the chicken, the prawns, or the cannelloni. So basically the lasagna, the fish, or the chicken. Right? It's always the same. Oh, and yeah, one thing I wanted to mention, because it never happened to me. I chose a white wine and the flight attendant came back to me with 2 glasses, and I was like, does she think I'm British? I don't want to get shit-faced like the other person used earlier in the show. And no, actually, she says, I believe that the other option is better. I brought you both to try so you can tell me which one you want. And by the way, she was right. The other option was better. And I kind of, really nice. See? I also had flown from New York to Singapore first class again with Singapore Airline. That was also very good. And what did I get? I think it was a Southern Thai red curry. It was pretty good. And Cathay Pacific, since it was not mentioned, I don't understand. I took braised chicken leg with mushroom sauce, and that was one of the best food I ever had in a flight. So see, I'm remembering mostly the good food and not the bad food. And one last, it was Aegean, and I really encourage you, Will, to fly Aegean. I know it's in Europe only, and it's to go to Greece, basically. It was my best sea bass ever, and probably not only my best sea bass ever in a flight, because it's not every day that I eat sea bass in a flight, but probably my top 20 sea bass in any restaurant, because it was made from a chef that has a Michelin star restaurant actually in Athens called Varulko. And I was lucky enough to go twice, actually, thanks to a friend called Dimitris. And that sea bass, I was like, how the heck did they do that in a flight? I was thinking about you, actually. I was thinking they just have like a microwave, basically, and they are able to deliver me such a great experience. Wow. So guys, get the sea bass when you're on Aegean.
Great recommendation. I mean, like, fish can be so hit and miss on planes, so I'll know what to keep an eye out if I find myself going to Mykonos.
Oh, yeah, you should go to Mykonos. Do you know the cheese called Graviera, which is a Greek cheese? Do you have that? That's one of my favorite cheese. They have that as well in flight, and it's actually very, very good. So there you go. I'm a cheese guy. I love cheese. I usually do not take dessert in these fancy cabins. I only take the cheese plate. And I even became a bit more British after now 8 years living here, because for me, cheese meant bread. And they always bring you cheese with crackers. And I think I got used to crackers.
Yeah, I think we talked about this on the Layovers episode. My fast and hard rule in this is that if it's a soft cheese, I want bread. If it's a hard cheese, I want crackers.
they do mostly hard cheeses. In
Yeah,
place.
they last
it's just
better.
easier to kind of
if they're gonna, because a soft cheese, if it comes out of like some sort of climate controlled area, you need to let it rest for a little bit to go whatever it's supposed to be, soft or gooey, because you don't want a hard soft cheese. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Avi Alex, whom I mentioned at the very beginning, whom I met in Tokyo in that craft beer bar completely randomly. She was flying Lufthansa to Kazakhstan, but to the other city, the ex-capital Almaty. And she got a message on her phone telling that at Frankfurt, there was a strike of all the chefs. So there was no food in the airport and no food in the aircrafts. Imaginatively, they had small ad hoc kind of booth when you could take a takeaway back and bring it into the flight. It was a bit like the Hunger Games. People were fighting for these bags. But, you know, Frankfurt is a mess anyway. Actually, a listener of us called Dennis Kozikis at D_Kozikis, the CKIS at the end, wrote me, it says, I haven't flown through Frankfurt for about 2 years now. Many times before I've connected international to the EU and it was okay. Today I'm connecting between Dublin and Riga and it's an effin. It doesn't say effin. It uses the other word that would have to be bleeped. Effin disaster. Paul, you were right all along. Well, I told you guys, Frankfurt is really, really bad. I don't know if there's any conspiracy about Frankfurt. There's conspiracy about Denver. There was this flight from DC, so from probably Dulles to San Francisco. And right where they were on top of Denver, this poor lady got stuck in the bathroom. Even the FAs, they wouldn't being able to open the lavatories. They had to divert to Denver. That must be quite the experience to actually land by being sat on the lavatory toilet. That must be quite something, actually. Of course, I was United.
It's a crappy situation.
And the other thing for me, Denver is because Denver is in Colorado. Colorado for me is a ski destination.
You can be in the hills on the slopes within 45 minutes. It's actually funny. I have a colleague of mine who I have a standing Friday meeting with, and 9 times out of 10, he's like, hey, throwing the dog in the back of the truck and heading to the mountains. I'm going to skip the meeting. I'm like, yeah, you do you. You go skiing up there. And so, yeah, you fly into Denver and you can be in the mountains in a heartbeat.
That was my situation when I was living in Geneva, where I'm from, because 45 minutes away, we're in the ski slopes. I cannot do that from London, man. It's impossible. The reason I'm asking you that is because I've never been to Denver Airport. You've been, as you said. But I remember on Reddit, maybe 2 years ago, this picture that circulated around of this dude that was waiting at a TSA line to board a flight at Denver and still had his ski boots on. For me, that was like, this is Denver.
Yeah, that's not uncommon.
Got off the slope.
Yeah, the things that you'll see people wearing Patagonia vests with their ski bags and ski stuff on, you know, their visors on, ready to go. Like the moment they get off the plane, they're just going to hit the ground and hit the slopes.
I think actually the roof of the main terminal also kind of recalls both the mountains and the Native American teepees or something. So tell us, what is Denver? Do you like this airport? Tell us.
As I alluded to earlier, I find it to be a really good airport to get in and out of. Actually, it's a really good airport to get out of. Getting into and through security can be a little bit of an interesting scenario. But yeah, it's a really decent airport. It's about 30 miles northeast of Denver proper. So it doesn't take too long to get in. There's a fantastic, transportation system to get into the airport itself. It's pretty damn new. It was built in 1995. So fairly new for and this is where we'll get into the conspiracy theory stuff in a little minute, but that's basically why it being so recent and a construction timeline is where some of these rumors come from. But it is the fourth largest hub for United behind Chicago, Houston, and Newark. So it's got some serious volume for United.
Wow.
And it's the largest hub for Frontier Airlines and is the main operating base for Southwest. So it's got some major players coming through there. Clearly. Which means that it's a strategic place in the heart. It's not really in the heart. It's in the middle of the Rockies, but central enough in the U.S. to be connecting you to plenty of other places. The thing that I found very overwhelming about it when I first started going is that there's one giant terminal that you rock up to, and then once you go through security, the entire airport does security in one place, and then you get shuttled out to your individual gate areas. And so you have this aircraft hangar of a room that is literally thousands of people going through the same security. And you think when you're there and the lines are 50,000 people deep, I'm obviously exaggerating, but you're looking at it and be like, there's no way I'm ever going to catch my flight.
make the
But then
plane.
there's
Yeah.
like 30 to 40 TSA checkpoints. So basically,
Oh.
you move really, really fast. And a lot of the canine sniffer dog testing is happening at Denver to try and get people through the checkpoints faster. And so you're always seeing dogs there going back and forth. And they're actually testing new ways of checking for contraband or explosives in that airport.
Sorry to interrupt you right there, because it's a discussion I've been having. I think it was the Plain Talking UK podcast. Is you mentioned earlier yourself that Colorado has legalized cannabis or marijuana, but not all states have. And one of the pilots who participates in the show that I just mentioned, and maybe the dogs are also there for that reason, said that even if you were to fly between two states that have legalized this, the plane is under federal law, and thus you're not supposed to have marijuana in flight. And maybe the dogs are also sniffing.
I think so. I think that might be the case as well. And it's funny, every single time I get an Uber to Denver airport, they always do, and like just a quiet reminder. But I had one guy who was like, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now reaching Denver International Airport, where you may be going to the sticky icky, the green goodness, when he talks about marijuana, is not legal where you're from. I will be happy for a small fee to dispose of whatever you have in the car, no questions asked." I'm like, oh, this is a nice little side hustle for the guy. And yeah, the rule is, even though it's legal in California and legal in Denver, you can't transport it across state lines. Otherwise, you're going to spend a very long time in prison. So yeah.
So once you pass security, that you said that actually clears pretty quickly, the rest of the experience is okay?
Yeah, it's fairly decent. You know, you take the sort of, what are they called, shuttle trains out to the different, not necessarily terminals as much as they are gate areas, like gate area A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever it might be you're going out to. And like, yeah, it's pretty well laid out. The amenities are fine. It reminds me of Hong Kong in a certain way, which is these long corridors, very open and airy compared to, you know, some of the New York-based airports, which just feel so claustrophobic. Yeah. But it's decent for that. The only downside is that A, it's at such high elevation, and B, it's Colorado weather, so you will run into delays because of planes getting in or planes getting out.
That might explain why something I learned the other day, it has the longest runway in the US, which is 16,000 feet. So that's almost 5 kilometers, guys. 16,000 feet. That's very long. And maybe it is because you need in high altitude.
Summertime, the air gets so hot that you don't get enough lift. And so they often have to like delay flights in the middle of the day because they just don't have enough pressure to get up because it's so hot.
Wow. Because it's a big airport. I mean,
the footprint is twice the size of Manhattan.
Holy cow. The good thing is that when you create a new airport, because you mentioned it was built 20 years ago or something, when you create a new airport, better take a huge footprint so it's like future ready. I think currently there's around 60 to 65 million passengers a year. But when it was built, it can handle, if the master plan is followed, it can handle 120 million passengers a year. So we're talking about, they have a lot of room. They already have like 6 runways. And it can also I don't remember, they could go to a lot of other runways as well. So at least it's future ready.
Yeah, and it needs that footprint for the Illuminati base underneath.
Yeah, so tell us about that. So, when I reached out to Will about a few weeks ago, I obviously had heard a little bit about these stories, but never looked into them. And I said to Will, okay, so you're going to be my guest co-host. I always give the airport to the co-host. And I said, which airport do you want to actually cover? He said, let's do Denver. You guys have never done it. And there's all these conspiracy theories. And I'm like, okay, let me Google that. And it's pretty batshit insane, actually, what they're telling. Yeah. So run us through some of the art and design. It's kind of weird,
so let me caveat this by saying this is on the Denver website, the Denver airport website. They wholeheartedly embrace this. Oh. So since the airport's opening in 1995, there have been endless rumors and theories. People say our underground tunnels lead to secret meeting facilities for the world's elite. Our blue horse, which I'll get onto in a second, is thought to be cursed. Some believe we are connected to the New World Order and the Freemasons. Some people even believe that we are the home to a colony of lizard people. And this is all on their website.
I didn't know. That is amazing.
And so a couple of things that they mentioned there. The New World Order, there is a plaque that talks about the New World Airport, and that the fact that there's a bunch of Freemason signs everywhere, and that the fact that they screwed up the original construction back in 1995, that they didn't tear down, they just buried it. And so they think that the underground buildings are, secret layers for people. And really they're just like tunnels that never got used. Again, same with the Illuminati. The Illuminati one's a little interesting because there's a time capsule that is surrounded with these weird symbols. And they're not weird symbols. They're actually Native American language and periodic table symbols. So they were trying to be smart, but now one thinks that they're, hiding something. There is another idea that there's fallout shelters underneath there.
I guess the Illuminati and the New World Order, in case of the
exactly, they need to be able to
hide somewhere.
Exactly, which
this is insane.
Wouldn't necessarily make, who knows, and then maybe the tunnels that there are massive amounts of tunnels. It's about what they're using them for. And then the one that they mentioned, Blue Mustang, which is this 9,000-pound, 32-foot tall horse sculpture with glowing red eyes at the airport, is also a cursed monument. And not only is that true, it's already killed people. It killed the original artist. Luis Jimenez died in 2006 when a piece of the sculpture's head broke off and severed an artery in his leg. And so, and there's a bunch of other things that, weird symbols around the airport. In fact, they did a great video marketing campaign about 6 months ago where they installed these gargoyles around the airport that then became animatronic and would interact with customers and guests. And they would talk about the fact that there are these conspiracy theories and that they're all true. And so they really lean into it. And so I think the combination of the elevation, certain things being legal there, and all these other little clues let people's imagination run wild with them. But it's hilarious. And it's always fun things you can see when you're transferring through the airport.
I will say that looking at some of the pictures that I saw linked to these conspiracy theories, it's true that some of the design of the airport can be not to the taste of everyone. I mean, some of the stuff is a bit weird. Does that mean that there's like a secret world airport new whatever commission that has created some hidden bunkers for the Nazis or something? But it's true that maybe the combination of weird art, because there were some other pieces that were mentioned in some of the articles I read, plus the fact that it's a bit weird, plus this all maybe F up at the start of mix it for a fun story. But I didn't realize, you telling me that the airport embraced it. That's such a great way to do it. Of course, for some people will say, they do it because it's another way to kind of hide.
Oh, yeah, it's hiding in plain sight. Yeah, exactly. Exactly what the lizard people want us to believe.
They are amongst us, but they are amongst us. Oh, God. Wow, this is so I need to go there just for that reason. I want to see all these artifacts and other places you've mentioned. I want to see that. And this is why, guys, this is why I needed the expert in conspiracy theories and pre-admirals and food to be with us. The last one I saw about the airport, but you really have to be crazy to think about that, is that if you look on Google Maps from the top satellite view, it supposedly looks like a swastika. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Because then, I can make everything look like whatever I want. Like a lizard. I'm sure that London Heathrow looks like a lizard if you look at it from the sky. The lizards are amongst us, man. So, first of all, thank you, Will. But before, like we always do in the closing of our show with Alex, we missed you. I mean, he's missed this flight and probably is going to miss a few others. Are you flying anytime soon?
I got to go to Denver for my Illuminati meeting in 2 weeks. I am going to Denver in 2 weeks, but it's for less clandestine and more overt reasons. I'm just going there for a meeting.
Hiding in plain sight. I'm not flying before the recording of the next show because the next show will be recorded pretty quickly. This will go whenever I have the time to actually put it out. Maybe as a last word, maybe if people want to know more about food or conspiracy theories or about lizards at Denver, is there any way they can reach you? Maybe Twitter or anything else? Which one do you tell us?
On Twitter, I'm at William Hunter, at MasticationNTN, and then on Instagram, I'm at Will Hunter as well. So hit me up on any of those and you'll probably get a response from me.
So I want to thank you again because honestly, without the Lizard Hunter, I would have not been able to try that format. Guys, give a big shout out to Will when this episode comes out. Remember to, of course, subscribe and review. He deserves a 5 stars, obviously. Listen to Mastication Nation, even if they're not running. You have all the letters of the alphabet. I haven't listened to the last ones, and I'm not sure which food you went for Z and whatever, but I'll be very interested. People, you can discover that. Me, I'll be back with another guest host. Surprise, who is going to be. And please give a shout out as well to Alex. Alex is with us in spirit because right now he's probably actually having a lizard meeting, and this is why he's not with us. Thank you again, Will, and happy travels.
Thanks.